spook easily stung.
Have you ever explored the depths of fear? Have you ever wondered what depravity dwells within the imagination of a storyteller that prompts them to exhume horrors untold and expose those horrors to unsuspecting audiences? Some are repulsed, and some are shaken. However, there are those who are invigorated. So to those demented souls, we invite you to journey inward into the dark bowels of human imagination. Press play, and you will discover what's in the podcast.
And welcome back to another edition of What's in the Podcast. And for today, well, words are getting out about people fainting and throwing up in the aisles of the theaters with the advanced screenings of Terrifier 3. And recently on TikTok, humorously, there's been someone going around saying that people who love this particular subgenre of horror are sick and depraved and need therapy and the like. So it got me to thinking, first off, well, just kind of thing. Well, so it led to me also just thinking about the idea of the slasher. And yeah, this is the one subgenre of horror that is constantly beleaguered by politicians. It's the one that's constantly always trotted out as the example of why horror is a depraved genre and why they question how can people find entertainment in a genre that from the outsiders looking in seems to be just all about mayhem, violence, gore, and depravity. So today, now originally I was thinking of sliding this in with our age-old fears category to kind of talk about this, but this is kind of more a analysis of our love of this genre and why we just seem to just get a kick out of it no matter what. And frankly, if there's anyone who I want to intellectualize with this better, it is a friend who we have not had on the pod for a good long while, though I have had the immense pleasure of having great discussions on her YouTube channel, Horror Movies and Beyond, which I will say hilarious reviews of Wolf Cop, Doom Asylum, and Blood Diner. So that is Ivotres Littles with Horror Movies and Beyond. Welcome back.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me.
Again. It has been too long. It has been too long. The Dolls episode is still one of my favorites. I still maintain it's incredible we got and so much mileage out of that movie when even our episode intellectualizing on it actually outran the runtime of the movie itself. And only a discussion between you and I could have brought that out. So, you know,
true.
I have been aching to have you come back to discuss horror in a academic perspective as we did before. So for you, what is a slasher to you and why do you get a kick out of them?
Well, to me, a slasher is a movie that has the monster or whatever that uses stabbing weapons, blades, or something to mutilate their victims, cut them in half, gut them out, and stuff like that. And I would say almost exclusively uses stabbing weapons because, I mean, he could use one blade and that's it. And it's like, is that a slasher? Well, then he's using other things, you know, his hands, feet, or whatever. And I just think it's at least 80% of the film is just, it uses a blade of some sort to mutilate its victims. I'm not a huge fan of slashers, not because they're slashers, it's just because it's so oversaturated throughout the years that I just do not find it as entertaining as when I was younger. That's why. So.
Okay, I admit I was not expecting that, but that's actually going to be a fun thing to do. But you do.
That's why I chose the topic.
Yeah, really that is true. You did choose the topic, and I'm actually and with that perspective, I'm really glad you did because you're actually right. Because slashers, when people think horror, that is always the kind of the lifeblood of the genre. And yeah, more commonly, if you look in a general release year, the most popular subgenre of horror always seems to be the slasher. And I suspect a lot of it is that depending on how you write the script and depending on what you what resources you have at your disposal, it's probably some of the easiest to make. And for some of the lazier ones, all they think they have to do is just put a killer in a scary looking mask, which they could probably get, which thanks to some popular slashers, now they think like, oh, I just have to hop by spirit, find the scariest looking one, and then just slap it on them and we're good to go. Yeah, I see where you're coming from there. And it does seem like nowadays they have to work a lot harder to make a slasher stand out from the rest.
Yeah.
So, like you said, you used to enjoy these. So what was it about those particular slashers back in the day that did allure you versus nowadays when you're kind of more out of love with it?
I think it was a variety. I think it was a lot more variety because when I was young, it was Friday the 13th when that one, and then we had a little bit of Texas Chainsaw. To me, I don't think it's a real slasher in the sense compared to, Halloween and Friday the 13th, but it is in the category. So that's no here nor there. That's another thing. But then we just didn't have Michael Myers or Freddy, or Jason. It was like slasher after slasher coming out, different ways, different weapons, sizes and shapes, monsters. I mean, it was so much going on in the 80s that even then it was like oversaturated. It was like, what else can happen? How many times can you gut a person? How many times can you behead them? How many times can you just attack people? And then in the 90s, I mean, they had a little bit of it, but then it kind of ran out of ideas. And that's kind of happened the same thing in the 1940s. And then that's how we got sci-fi, aliens, and monsters, because they were tired of, the Frankensteins and the Draculas. But then Scream came back, and I think, to me, Scream is a whole nother category, but I think Wes Craven was even making fun of, the whole joke of just these slashers using don't run up the stairs, run out the door, the phone call, don't unlock the door. I mean, he was making fun of what was happening with those, and he kind of changed the perspective of that, which I appreciate. But it also started to bring back a little bit of it, but I just don't feel at the time that they could replicate what has happened in the 80s. And even now, I mean, you don't really see that many slashers, and if you do, they're like not great, but except for one which is Terrifier. But even when it first came out, people were like, who cares? Until the second one came out, and it was like, wait, what is this? And it took a different turn, and then here we are today. So that's why I think the 80s was just new and fresh, and it was so many ways. But now I think there's just, what else can you do with a slasher?
Well, for everyone watching, this may be a touch of a point counterpoint type thing, because I personally believe that we've actually had some really fascinating. I mean, the X trilogy to me is a wonderful exercise in trying new things with slashers. I would even say this year's In a Violent Nature decided, let's do a slasher as a nature documentary, because that's what it was. People were like going, it's from the killer's point of view. No, it's a nature documentary where the people film from a distance, can't interfere with what's going on, watching the animal rip prey apart. That's a nature documentary. That's what that was. Obviously it's not going to be able to follow the killer under the water as he drowns somebody. He has no choice but to sit there and watch the prey bob up. But I think, but you do have a very strong point in terms of the 80s, because the 80s really was the boom, and the boom kicked off because of Halloween. And because of that, so many filmmakers were trying to capture that formula, which is why we had a ton of slashers with holiday themes. That's why we had Prom Night. That's why we got Silent Night, Deadly Night, where April Fool's Day. We had all these holiday ones that were trying to recapture that formula. And some of them were lazier, where they just thought, well, just put some rando in a mask and put a blade in their hand and they're golden. But sometimes, with the oversaturation, with all the crap that comes out, it does make the great ones shine brighter. a lot more. So that is kind of, and so I definitely agree with you that anyone can just make a generic slasher, but you do have to do something really special in order to make it work. So what do you think makes us, like for you with the slashers that you love, what do you think makes a great slasher?
It's not just the way they kill, it is why. I think that's important. It's why. I've seen every which way someone got killed. But so there's really nothing new for me. I like, if it's a slasher, I like to connect with the killer. I want to know what was the purpose, like throughout the film, even if they do not explain it, because to me, we're following. Yeah, we have these other people, but for me, I follow the killer. Like, why are they chasing this person? What is the purpose? How old? How young? I go through all these like ridiculous, I don't know, themes or whatever for the film, but it's not the way they're killing. It's just the entire story as itself of why. Like if I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this killer, it's like, well, why are you slashing this woman? Why are you putting body parts together? And then you go back and realize, well, they were abused by their mother and they forced them or accused them of doing all kind of stuff that their father did, and just like being abusive. And it's like, okay, now he then slashed up his mother. There's a specific movie I'm talking about. He's
I'm sensing a pattern. I'm sensing at the second you say, I have a feeling I know which one you're leaning on.
Bastard! Bastard! Bastard!
He slashes his mother, but then cuts her up, and as he's an adult now, something triggers, and then he start putting body parts together to create his own woman. That is a cool story. But then it kind of, similar to Blood Diner. The other one I was talking about is Pieces, but
Pieces.
But it's just a different. It's like, that is so different just to slash someone because they didn't showed up at your campsite. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, like it's something motivating, creating, putting together puzzle pieces. I like trying to figure it out. Obviously, in Friday the 13th, we know he's just going around getting people because they showed up.
Yeah,
it's to me, it's like, that is so boring. but then people want to see how he kills them.
Yeah,
I guess that's the fun of it. I'm a little different.
Yeah,
I want to know why he's killed.
Yeah, well, the one thing about Friday the 13th, I would imagine, I guess you feel differently about the first film, because the first film kind of sells itself more as a whodunit. And in that case, when you do meet Mrs. Voorhees, and credits,
that's a good valid reason why she's after them.
Yeah, she wants revenge. Well, she wanted revenge against the camp for their neglect of her son. But after that, she wants to make sure that camp stays closed so it never happens again. But of course, she's taking it ridiculously far. And you could even intellectualize with the second one, because again, no one's ever been clear about how the hell the second one's possible. Jason probably saw the night his mom died and is continuing on that streak of revenge. Like, yeah, but you're right. There is that other end of the spectrum where sometimes, you could have filet mignon all the time, but having filet mignon like all the time gets boring. Every now and then you just want a freaking pizza. And a lot of times those, practically most of the other Friday the 13th entries afterwards, they're the pizza. They're the times when you just want to see nameless people. And a lot of times the formula of make them as irritating as possible, so that way you are pretty much rooting for Jason when he when he lays waste to him. So there's that side of the spectrum, which I know that's the reason why a lot of people do enjoy a good slasher. I've even heard it said that some people are fully aware of the flaws of some of them, but they do like seeing a great kill scene because a lot of it is about how great the special effects are, like how great the process. A lot of times it is about the artistry of how good the special effects are. because a lot of the people who make those special effects end up going on to do greater things down the line. So,
Yeah.
and even more so with the lower the budget, a lot of times they like to see what they're able to accomplish in lieu of the fact that they don't have the money for it. So there is that angle, which I always love hearing that's, I mean, for me, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Intruder is a very silly film, silly film. But the reason I enjoy it so much is that the camera work is fantastic. Dan Hicks is firing on all cylinders with his performance, and Can-Be effects are really working for their money.
You know, each one of these killers, from the most popular ones, I think the killer was so glorified that we see them in the horror community as like the Hollywood or the A-list of how you would see, you know, Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. Like, we're coming to see him. I think that's, at this point, people don't care who's in him. They just want to see Jason, how he's going to look, how grotesque, or how the mask's going to look this time, how big and buff, and how he's going to kill, how strong he is. The fans of the movie is the fans of the star, which is now Jason, Freddy. You know, like, they're the star. No one cares what the story is, but if they put out a movie right now, Friday the 13th goes to the moon, lines are out the door. I just don't, it does not matter, because it is Jason. And I think at that point, that is tough for people to come up with new innovative slashers today. And I think Art the Clown, I absolutely love the Clown, and he twisted that a little bit. And now I think if they keep, you know, if it goes well, you know, number 3 and then move on, I think he would gradually get to the point. He will never be as high as Jason. He will never be a Freddy, but he could damn near hang tough with him.
He's doing a pretty good job. He's doing a pretty good job establishing himself.
He can establish himself, but there's 20, 30 years, maybe more, of the fan base to him. Now, there are fans of Art the Clown. I love Art the Clown. I just don't like the movies, but I love Art the Clown. But you get what I'm saying? Like, he could be so great, but he will never reach that status, you know, of Robert Englund. No way. No way. Until these people are no here, King Hodder and all, you know, unless they start going away, dying off, and he would have to make, you know, part 8, 10, but still up the violence and cruelty and everything in order to even get the same. But he's building up, but he got a long way to go. That's just my personal opinion. But he's there.
Oh, that's totally fine. I mean, if there's anything to admire about Terrifier, it is at its core the fact that Art the Clown, with the wonderful slasher trope of keeping mute, but the thing is, in a way, he's kind of like the beautiful hybrid of Jason and Freddy Krueger, in the sense that he's the silent killer like Jason, but he's got the personality and the showmanship of Freddy Krueger. And the best part is, he does it without saying a word. I mean, I will say, I kind of laugh my butt off every time someone comes in, sees the carnage he does, screams like crazy, and Art's just like doing the Urkel.
He's very expressive.
Doing the Urkel. Did I do that?
And I think that's why it's a winner so far, because it's just not standing there doing God knows what. Where he's going to get you, we know he's going to get you. But the build up to get you is how he comes get you. And it's just point A to B, but in between, he's going to be doing, you know, all these things.
There's a kind of
and why?
There's a kind of build up, and actually there are scenes in the movie where you don't know if he's, because you've seen him, you know that whenever he's in the room, something's going to go bad. but because he's such an erratic personality, you don't know if when he's gonna do it. Like, I mean, the whole scene in Terrifier 2 in the Halloween store, and you see him just messing around with the glasses and stuff, being a jackass, and even taunting Sienna with the horn. And the benefit of watching the first one first is that you know what he's capable of. You know the horrible things he'll do at the drop of a hat, but you don't know when he's going to do it. And I mean, it's like,
he doesn't kill everyone.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't, because when I was watching that scene and he was in that store, I think he was going to go leave and go after, but the cashier was being like a little pushy, a little towards him, and it was like, wait, and then it kind of stopped and then started playing with them to see where would they go, because the person was right there, and and I think he was on his way, and it's like, okay, now you're fucking with me. I gotta fuck with you. So he's a selective killer. He's just not like Michael Myers, where you just happen to be in the path and he get you.
Yeah, Michael Myers I always kind of describe him. He's a freight train. He's someone who, if you are in his way, you will in time be out of his way, and he will be part of it. And that's the thing that's always interesting about him. And going back to what you were saying about having to know the motive of the killer, he's kind of I guess you could say he's the exception that proves the rule, but he's the idea that because we don't know why he does what he does, that's the thing that makes him, and because of the fact that he wears a mask that basically blanks out his emotions, blanks out his face, so we can't get a bead on him and how he feels and everything like that, that right there adds an air of mystery. And I think the thing that allures people to Michael Myers is the fact that there's so much about him that we don't know.
I think we do know.
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends which timeline we're talking about. Damn you, Thorn!
Well, if we're not Rob Zombie, we're not gonna add him, even though I like those.
I actually like them too.
No.
Yeah.
But if you stay on the same, like, Halloween 1 and 2, and minus all the others, and Halloween H2O, which Halloween H2O I think is the second best one out of all of them, even the new one. And I would never throw that one out the window. I would stand on the soapbox for that one. Anyway, so if we kept that timeline, that 1, 2, and H2O, the motivation for him to kill is that he's the psycho person that is after his family. What happened between him and the family, that's the don't know part, but he is after his family, and that's the know part. Like, we know that. So to say completely we have no idea his emotions and the way he looks, I think that's not true, because some people don't show emotion, and they could be straight-faced or whatever, but their actions speak louder. And so for him to go after his family, I believe there's something that happened in order to go after his family. Because even, for him to attack his sister as a kid, or whatever, there had to be something that triggered that, because kids just don't do things.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at this as a trauma based, something happened to him, and he felt that he had to defend himself or take something out. Yeah. So I think at the time he was a victim, but it never played on that. It just showed him going to a facility, escaping, finding the car, figure out how to drive, and then go from there. But I think the story of who and why and where is always in our face, depending on the timeline. But if we stay on that one, it's there. So,
the one benefit of the Halloween franchise, and why I don't mind that the timeline went all haywire, is that we get a nice little variety to pluck from. And you prefer that timeline. We've had discussions about why I prefer the other timeline. But the point is, there is stuff that people who just would prefer the mystery, or there are some people who would prefer this route based on their own feelings. And that's leads to another avenue that maybe a lot of people like slashers because in some cases they have their own frustrations, their own angers, and instead of acting out on it physically and actually doing horrible things themselves, a lot of times they can take the catharsis in just watching these characters for motives that either is mysterious, so they could just kind of project onto them, or simultaneously they may actually have like their own like similar feelings. Like I can see people clicking with Jason. I can even see people clicking with Victor Crowley, because both of them are, and even Johnny from In a Violent Nature, because these were ones that came about because of bullying, because of abuse, and stuff like that, or even Angela from Sleepaway Camp. I mean, these are
But a
people.
lot of films, I think that's kind of the number one. That's the easier way to figure out why this person is killing. Because
Mhm.
even in the early ones, that was like the main source of why we see this slasher starting to slash. I mean,
Yeah.
the monster starting to slash because they were bullied in school, bullied in high school, picked on, beaten at home, or something like that. It's
Mhm.
always like that. But it's very rare someone would kill to kill. And there are some
Yeah.
movies that are like that, but it's a very rare thing.
That's why a lot of them, when you ever ask them who's their favorite, that's a lot of times why they answer that, why they answer those particular ones. Um, Even recently, everyone knows I have a love. Recently, we've been covering the Saw series, and that's been fun to intellectualize, just because of like how far to what extent do you agree with John Kramer in terms of the way he does things? Why does he do the way he does? Is his justice righteous? It's just fun to. I think that's another aspect to go down, is the fact that a lot of times slashers do kind of challenge us in terms of what we consider to be acceptable, in terms of, do the ends justify the means. So you would say audiences, kind of general audiences, are going to be much more interested in seeing the elaborate nature of how people who, for the most part, people you'd say, yeah, fuck those people, the elaborate nature of seeing how they get their demise, and the audience gets the kind of catharsis that comes from watching people get their just desserts.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
So the outsiders looking in would look at us seeing this kind of glee, taking glee from that, and as previously stated, they would look at us like we were like kind of demented for doing it. So I mean, what would you say to refute that particular type of argument? Because I'm sure you've been
Well,
asked, oh, why do you like these things?
well, you know what? Not as much. You'd be
Really?
surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that much, because and I think there's a reason for that, and then I'll answer your question. The reason that I don't get asked, why do I like this stuff, because you don't see a lot of people that look like me into the stuff. There's a
Mm.
lot that do like it, but it's common for people like that look like me to like nine and this.
Yeah.
So you don't really see it, and it's like if I'm wearing a shirt or my Halloween bag, it's like, oh, you're dressing up for Halloween. They only see it. I could wear it all year long, every day, like
Oh
horror
yeah.
shirts and everything. But as soon as October 1st hit it, they'll swear it's just, oh, you're dressing up for Halloween. I've been wearing
Yeah.
all this stuff all year long.
Come on,
Yeah,
people.
but from October 1st to the 31st, no one cares.
Yeah.
No one even bats an eye because it's the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I rarely do. That's a deep question.
It
That
is.
is a very deep question, because many people, I can't speak for everybody, but from people that I've
Yeah.
talked to, um, some of them watch it because of terrible things that has happened to them, and they identify with the heroine in
Hmm.
the movie,
Yeah.
and they use whatever monster, as that, I don't know, like that
Embodiment.
gate, yeah, and of the trauma they went through, and she or he is the person that, they can identify to fight it and survive it.
Yeah.
So that's from the point of view of others. Me, on the other hand, I do not see any horror movie that way. However, I have connected to certain characters in horror movies that really got my heart, because I started to identify the feelings and the monsters that they're either facing or has been removed from them.
Mm-hmm.
And I started identifying, like, I understand, because that mindset of being in the dark place,
Yeah.
is the monster. And Smile, I mean, regardless of people think about that film, is a one of the best representation of the monster within,
Mm-hmm.
and it's outside, surrounding us. It's
Yeah.
always around us. And I think it's the intrusive thoughts of the trauma we've been through. But I think it's the stages that you go through. You go through, anxiety, depression, hopelessness, and then,
Yeah.
you take yourself out. And I think the Smile creature, once it climbed in, is the hopelessness and take yourself out. You then
Okay.
gave into those feelings. And that's one of the movies, when I was watching, I knew exactly what was happening. And I felt that because I was like that.
Yeah.
And I always talk about these movies. The Conjuring does it. The Black Phone does it. So it just depends on the film. Like, I can watch Hellraiser, and that does not make me feel anything at all. Like, I don't feel erotic or nothing. Not, I've seen them all. I know. I just think it's such a cool. They're cool creatures.
Oh, they
I want
are.
to see how someone's going to change into something.
Yeah.
Like, girl with the cigarettes, now she's smoking out her throat. Like, I want to see, the hand splitting in the Hulu version one, and her arms split. I was like, like, those are cool things of how people change.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's only specific movies that really capture me. Like The Black Phone, I was
Oh,
crying
yeah,
so
me
hard
too.
it felt like I was at the funeral. I
Yeah.
couldn't stop crying when he was showing him how to, like, if I talk about it too much, I'm a
Oh,
lose it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I got
yeah.
to move on. Let me move
Oh,
on.
yeah, we got to move on. Okay, well, actually,
Yeah,
no, let's,
yeah.
I got a good springboard. Okay.
Okay.
That's actually
Because
a
I'll
fun,
be like,
well, that's a
yeah,
fun idea to think about, is that even though you could categorize the Black Phone in so many other subgenres of horror, it's definitely ghost related
yeah,
horror. It's definitely spiritual, but you could even say there's a little bit of a slasher element in
yeah,
there
yeah,
with the Grabber as a character.
yeah,
Hell, even another Clive Barker property, Nightbreed, has a
yeah.
slasher
Oh
element
yeah,
to it with
yeah.
the
That's
character of
right.
Dr. Decker. So one could even say that even just the ingredient of a slasher can actually enrich what is all the other aspects of what you got, because let's even think about, and I guess this is veering into age-old fears territory, but the idea of someone who takes on the mantle for the sake of killing, or it's always fascinating to, like you said, explore the motive, explore the why. And if you throw that into a different scenario, that does change the dynamic of things. It changes the power dynamic of between the characters. And yeah, you're right about certain, not just about the killer, but because of the main character in general. I've seen a lot of people say they identify with those characters, and because of how imposing the threat is
Mm-hmm.
of the slasher in general, you get and if you have the right hero slash heroine of the piece, if that's a character you can get with, that's already a win in your battle right there. I've always been of the persuasion, I kind of like because I've always been a sucker for the freak shall inherit kind of plot lines. I've always liked the idea of the people who are ousted, the people who are treated as pariahs or something. I'm always a big fan of that kind of level of comeuppance. But even going into another one, which is another character who is completely treated like shit, even before anyone even knows the truth about her, is Angela in Sleepaway Camp. I mean, this is
Mm-hmm.
someone who doesn't make any effort to try to get on anyone's radar. This is someone who just arrives and just tries to be a wallflower, just tries to not say a word, just tries to just exist and just try not to ripple the water. But everyone is just coming at her because she's not trying to be among everyone else. It's like, and I did that in high school. I did that actually not even high school, in middle school, or even I just basically said, I'm just going to shut up and I'm just going to try to just get through the day. But people just kept coming at me, just being all like, what the fuck's your problem?
I mean, I've experienced that in
Yeah.
middle school quite often,
Mm.
and it freaking sucks. So, I mean, looking at Sleepaway Camp, yeah, that movie was way before its time.
Oh, baby.
And
And incidentally, everyone, go to the commentary I did with Logan and Lynn, where we get deep into that side
yeah,
of the discussion.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I saw that as a kid. I can't remember if I saw it in the theater or something, but I do remember watching that as a little kid. And I didn't get it. Like, I'm looking where it was just like, what happens if she's like, hollering and got her blade and completely nude
Yeah.
and everything's there. But it didn't resonate that she was a he. Like, it didn't, I didn't understand
Yeah.
as and then I saw it as an adult and I was like, wait, okay, I get this.
Yeah.
Um, but she was the victim even at home. She
Absolutely.
was she was purely a victim in the entire movie. And
Mm.
I don't want to justify, like, doing things that people make sense, but for film purposes, I
Yeah.
get I get it. You get it. But
Yeah.
then the movies kind of got weird. Like, they kept going, and I it was just, I don't know.
Second and third one are
They
weird.
were just
Yeah.
pulling from anything, and then it
But
kind of veered away from what it was.
yeah.
But I wish they could have stopped
But
right
writing up,
there.
yeah, but I think the core, actually, this might be an interesting notion. I think the reason why slashers in particular gain so much ire is because a lot of them actually had the sack to call out certain aspects of society. And here
Mhm.
you have characters who are lashing out because that society has abused them and rejected them. And because of that, and a lot of times the establishment hate the idea that they're vilifying the society that they deem, like, of course, in the 80s, that might even be another aspect of the 80s slashers, of why a lot of the politicians stuff didn't like it, is because they were the ones being called out by a lot of them. I think the best one, and the one that got so much hate that it got pulled from the theaters after a couple weeks, was Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Mm.
Now, on the surface, it was because parents were freaking out because this movie had a killer Santa, or at least what they thought was Santa as a killer. And I'm like going, some people didn't see Christmas Evil. The funny thing about that movie, and I always joke about it, and I always say to people, um, here's a movie that about someone who was so abused and suffered such horrific trauma, and a part of that trauma came about because there was a guy dressed as Santa who killed his parents, and from that trauma he snaps, like, and
Mhm.
because of the abuse of the nuns in the orphanage, because the establishment basically did nothing to help him heal mentally, that it was a far gone conclusion that this poor kid was going to snap and start his own killing spree, because in his mind, that's what Santa does. He punishes those who are naughty, so he gets in a Santa suit. And the funny thing is, as I say, if those mothers actually went to see the movie and actually saw, this movie actually agrees with you. It's about the idea of what happens when we tarnish these icons that are by design supposed to be represent the best of us, but when some horrible act of violence happens that tarnishes that image, it ends up damaging impressionable minds. And ironically, that movie was kind of on their side. But I think the other thing they just couldn't handle is the fact that the real problem with this kid happened because the government failed this kid, like the orphanage failed him, because the nuns were so hell-bent to spread their own agenda that they didn't bother to give this kid, well, I'm going to say kids, because of course his brother went nanners in the second one.
Mhm.
um, but the fact that the establishment basically failed these kids to help them heal psychologically, to recover from this trauma, and they just thrust them back into the world where they're basically being assaulted by the image of their core trauma. And it's like, that's really where the heart, and I think a lot of people, a lot of the politicians have also, and the critics were taking issue with the fact that they're like saying, oh, they're all these institutions that are meant to be good and just, and they're making them look horrible. And it's like, because they are horrible people. So that's kind of, I think that's another thing that I think a lot of outsiders looking in don't seem to grasp about slashers, that a lot of times they are interested in exploring human nature and the things that cause violence, in all of us. So what's your take on that?
This is new. That what you were saying
Really?
is new to me. Yeah.
No kidding. Oh yeah, famously. Oh no, a lot. Actually, funny thing is, Nightmare on Elm Street came out the same weekend as Silent Night, Deadly Night, and for a time, Silent Night, Deadly Night was outgrossing it, but because it got pulled from the theaters, it basically cleared the way for Freddy to come in and just slay the
This
company.
is new, and I don't know.
Wow.
And this is new information for
No
me, so
kidding.
I can't even say anything because I don't know. Maybe I was sheltered up to this point. Like I've never even heard as an adult that it got pulled out.
Oh yeah.
But I did see it. I barely remember it. But it was probably VHS. I mean, I've seen so many movies that, oh my God, this is like the worst movie because it's making people feel a certain way or whatever. I've seen them, I watched them, but they my mom would get them, my sister would go get them, and we would watch them together, nudity and violence and all. So I never had that experience of like, or even read anything. Even in the current stage, like this movie did this, and so now we can't see it. Like that's completely new to
me. Yeah, and it's a power, and it is a powerful image, and I get why people would have this knee-jerk reaction of assuming that this movie, and because unfortunately it's that stigma that gets kind of slapped onto horror, and on the whole, because people just automatically assume. And yeah, because you have a lot of times where filmmakers, studios will basically bang out a cheap slasher for the sake of a quick buck. Those do tend to tarnish people's image, thinking that if one's like this, all of them are going to be like this. And they don't want to give a chance to the idea that some of them are actually intending to make some kind of profound statement regarding what motivates people to violence. Like you said, you were bringing up Pieces earlier. I mean, I love the fact that you found that much depth in a movie like Pieces, where I mean that's a hard one to refute in terms of the director's attitudes, particularly towards women, but doesn't change the fact that Pieces is still a freaking entertaining as hell film. But the fact that you were still able to find a good, strong like impetus behind the character's motivations towards violence, I mean that says something, and about the importance of just going in and just seeing for yourself of like what is really going on here. I mean, another one like to me that I think is probably one of the best. It's as much as it falls underneath the heading of slashers. I mean, the one to me that I think is that kind of goes beyond it is Maniac.
Ooh. Oh man, that's
a
conversation.
That in and of itself is a conversation, and I will say.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, the best part is about both versions, of course, Bill Lustig's original and the 2012 one, is that both of them do a great job of wanting to get into the heart and soul of a killer and actually like help, like tell the audiences, take our hand, we're going to take you into the den of someone who is a profoundly damaged mind. And it's like, if you want to take this ride, you're going to take this ride, and it's not going to be pretty. And I think, to me, on the other complete opposite end of the spectrum of something like Pieces, which can be enjoyed as just pure trash or piece goodness, but still has
Maniac was wild.
Yeah, Maniac
that was wild.
Yeah.
But there was a scene that stood out to me. Right? It's the only one I remember. I mean, I've seen the movie, but it's the only one that's like, there was a scene where he went to go get one of those workers, and he took her back to his place. And there was a change of heart. Like there was a point where he was just like, I'm just not going to do this. And whatever he was planning on doing. And she just kept pushing to do, you know, in her mind, it was like, it was work.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking
To
about
get them.
in the beginning of the
Yeah.
movie when he with the prostitute, when she's
Yeah.
doing it because she's doing another job, and yeah, you see that he's
He's
trying, but then
but
something snaps at him.
but he was going to do something to her because he
Yeah.
previously did something to others.
Oh
So,
yeah.
but then there was a change of heart. There was like a point where he was just kind of like, you should go, you know, and she just kept pushing, and nah, you know, she just kept like, she was just trying to get her money, you know,
Yeah.
do what she needs to do, and it led up to her getting messed up.
Mhm.
And it was just, that lets me know that he really doesn't want to do what
Mhm.
he's doing, because
Yeah.
if he was fully like a full-fledged murderous rage, there would be no time for talking. It was just do it. He would have just got her, scalped her, and did whatever. And a
Exactly.
really good example of that is Henry.
Oh
And
yeah.
that that was so messed up because no one knew what he was capable of. And I don't think that he didn't want to take that girl out. I think
Mhm.
it was just, you don't crap where you eat. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, both of these movies, and these are movies that, man, they were reviled when they came out. And a lot of the reason, and I'm gonna throw down, I think the reason why is because these movies boldface said, we're gonna take you down an exceptionally dark path, one that will pretty much shed a light in the very dark recesses of human nature. We are going to take you into the killer's world. We are going to show you, you know, just how they operate on their day-to-day basis, what motivates them, and just, and I think a lot of people, a lot of the like people who are so mortified by this are people who just are, I don't want to say they're deluded, but they have this desire to want to maintain an illusion that, you know, society isn't as sick as this, and it couldn't possibly create people as sick as this. But both of these movies do a wonderful job showing that no, these people are the product of a society that is very clearly not in good shape.
I think Maniac is the extreme, but Henry was more realistic.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely on that. But yeah, I'm with you entirely on that. And it's easily one of the most disturbing films ever made by
Oh,
virtue of the fact that it played it so real. What we have done here as we talk about this, you know, we've kind of talked about slashers that go run the gamut from just being, you know, just fun entertainment to, you know, to ones that are actually trying to have a statement in regards to the violence in society. And there's, and I think it's safe to say for each of us, yeah, we have ones that we really, that we prefer and that we enjoy. So I think so between you and me, we both have compiled the slashers that I think truly define everything that we love about slashers. Now, they're not necessarily our favorites, but they're the ones that we feel kind of embody everything we enjoy about slashers. So, so on a turn-based level, I think both of us can go back and forth, kind of talk about you know, these slashers we've picked. And I will say if we agree in the middle, then awesome. That means this will take less time. So, but I'm pretty sure we will agree on or have a couple that we feel the same way about. So, you go first. What's your first one?
the first one I have is no particular order, but it's Slaughter High. Came
Ah,
out in '86.
c'est magnifique.
That is like the definition of what happens when you bully a kid.
Oh man, does it go
Man.
there, man?
Yeah.
It goes crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
that I live for the exploding bed. Just the electrified bed that is probably one of the greatest use of fireworks since Frankenhooker. I mean, that was just amazing.
That was wild.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I knew I was in for a ride, and I was so happy you recommended that one to me. And I will never stop thanking you for that.
Slaughter High. I
Oh
had
yeah.
no business looking at that as a kid.
So that, and would you say now with the bullying angle, that's definitely a very strong example. I mean, would you also say that it had a great sense of fun about it? That would you say that's because the kills were so tongue in cheek and so wild that you were able to have some fun with it?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You didn't know who was I mean, you kind of had an idea of who the
Oh,
killer was. They kind
it
of,
was pretty clear.
yeah, it was like,
It was
here we
pretty
go.
clear.
But so much was going on that you forget a minute. Like as soon as they get to the building, and then things are happening, you kind of forget, and
Yeah.
then it kind of do little flashbacks, and then you
Mhm.
forget, and then and then you realize he was like April Fools.
Which, fun fact about that movie, originally it was supposed to be called April Fool's Day, but
That's
because the slasher April Fool's Day was actually being made, they had to slap the title.
yeah. I always thought that movie was called April Fools.
Mhm.
Not the April Fools where you see the girl with the knife behind her back.
Yeah, I love that poster.
Not that one, because I always got it mixed up. I was like, no, it's called April Fools. And people would be looking at me, no, it's not here.
Yeah.
Like when I would go, and I was like, I swear it was
Yeah,
called April Fools,
it's
but
not
then
this
it's
one.
Slaughter
It's
High.
not this
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Because it's supposed to take place on April Fools.
Yeah,
Well, the
exactly.
day before, was it the night before? Or something like that? Because
Yeah.
it was daylight when he was like April Fools.
Yeah. I think it
Or
was
was that morning or something? I don't
I want
know.
to say it was like, yeah, I think it was like morning or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was the original plan. But because of the fact that they got wind about the April Fool's Day slasher with Amy Steele, yeah, they were like, oh yeah, we got
Yeah,
to swap the
that
title.
makes sense.
Slaughter High's a better title anyway.
Yeah,
I like Slaughter High
Slaughter
better.
High. Yeah.
I think for me when it comes, yeah, when it comes to camp slashers, like, or ones where, yeah, it is saying something, but yet goes completely balls to the wall crazy. Just because I think the filmmakers know, we know why you're here, but we're still going to have a little bit of a story with it. I'm going to give love to the Hatchet films
Oh, okay.
as well, because the one thing about Adam Green is that Adam Green is a guy who has grown up with these movies. I mean, he loves these movies, and he set out to make like it's because those movies were coming out during the proliferation of torture porn. So with Saw, with The Collector, and all that, and with Hostel, and he's like, can we get back to, having like just a memorable killer just coming out, and we'll all have a good time watching it, and so for me, the Hatchet films, apart from the fact they have a great mythos with Victor Crowley, just a great setup for the character, and one that you can actually sympathize with him, and you understand. It's so simple. It immediately tells you what the killer's about, and you don't need more than that. And it's just a great set. And even better, you have a great leading heroine with Mary Beth Dunstan, who she herself has her own compelling arc surrounding Victor Crowley. They has all the ingredients, but because the ingredients are so simple, it frees them up to be able to just go completely batshit crazy, balls to the wall. And because of all the low budget, and because it's John Carl Buechler, especially on the first film, working on the special effects, it's just crazy, the stuff they do on it, and it has a great sense of humor. And even the humor goes full throttle, so it immediately tells people that you don't have to be sickened by it. You can actually just laugh and just have a good time because the characters are silly, the kills are silly. You can have a grand old time with this sucker, and yet still actually be invested in the story because the story is easy to follow. Fine. So, what's next for you?
It's Intruder.
Oh, baby.
I had so much fun watching that. I was just laughing. It was so ridiculous.
There's going to be nothing to the people listening to the podcast, but I don't care. I got to show you.
Oh, okay.
Here comes fucking Parker walking 9 miles down the road with a sandwich in one hand and his head hanging by his hair in the other. Oh yeah, I cosplay from this sucker. I love Intruder.
Man, it was just so. And that was the first time I was like on Tubi, and I was like, "What is this?" And I never seen it before, and I watched it, and I was just cracking. The kills were like they were in your face. They were like you're watching
the bandsaw kill.
Yeah,
the table bandsaw kill. That's an all timer right there.
And it had some comedic. But
yeah,
it was just like it wasn't trying to be serious, but it was. The characters believed it was serious, so it was like you just had fun. I just really had a fun time with it.
And the best part was the filmmakers all openly said, "We just thought, wouldn't it be fun to put a slasher in a supermarket and see what happens from there?" And it's an inspired notion because it's like, well, you're in a supermarket, there's going to be a lot of cutlery, there's going to be a lot of stuff in the back that's going to, it left it open for like some really cool ideas for a slasher scenario.
Yeah. The ending
And
was pretty messed up though.
oh yeah,
They got away, but
I love it. I always love it.
oh my
And
god.
when the killer, and you know what, I even like in this case, you actually did sympathize with our lead character, even though I did think it was a bit weird that the movie tried to actually make us like her abusive boyfriend character at the end. But even so, it's still it's still awesome that this super fucked up scenario that all this is happening. The perpetrator we think is about to die, but then he's like, no, they did it. And unfortunately, her boyfriend was already being called on by the police. So it's like, oh, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Mhm.
So, all right. Well, one actually, it's funny we haven't even talked about it, but one that even during my formative years, it was that one rare weirdness where my mom actually let me sit down and watch it. But I was in middle school at the time, so I think I had wiggle room. Was Scream. I mean, Scream itself.
Ah, that's one of mine.
Good. We can both talk about that. But actually, and it's going back to the idea of a foundation of why a killer does it. When you think about every single, and I always love pointing this out to people, but every single person who is killed in the Scream franchise is an embodiment of one form or another of white privilege. Every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whether it be kids who are let off the leash, who are just, left to their own devices to just do what they want, or whether it be moms who are trying to delude themselves into thinking they were a great mom, but it's someone else's fault, or even parents who just encourage their kids, not realizing they're creating a monster. I'm like, that's I think is kind of amazing about that entire franchise. But yeah, it's the franchise that pretty much, you're right, it woke up a dormant subgenre and kind of really gave it a new form and a new shape. And kind of, and even to, and you could even say, even to the eyes of the critical elite at the time, even showed that slashers had the capacity to have smarts, actually be smart.
Mm-hmm.
And even more fun is that they are pretty damn good whodunits.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed all of them except for one.
Which one?
One, I just thought it was the worst acting of all time. In the genre. I mean, not the genre, in the franchise. Only in the franchise. You want to know which one?
We could save it for after sign off. I think the thing we should both focus, oh fuck it, go ahead.
You want to know which one?
I want to know, and you know what? I think you've opened it up for our listeners. They're going to want to know too.
Scream 4. I cannot stand it.
Oh, really?
Worst one. Yeah, I hate it.
Well, I think you've told me this before. I think you also, it's because there's a certain actress in it who you're not particularly crazy about. I know.
No, it's not that. They're just all terrible. It's just terrible acting. None can't convince nothing. Like, it was just bad, the whole thing. And that was the first time I watched it. I've seen all of them in the I've seen up to 3 in the theater, and then the 5 and 6 in the theater. 4 I've never watched until like a year ago. For some strange reason, I've never seen 4. And then I sat down and watched it, and I was like, what is this? Yeah.
That's a surprise. Most people in a popular fashion usually say 3, and I've even heard people diss on the recent 2, and I'm like, really? But ultimately, this entire franchise just seems to dedicate itself to comment on what's going on in our cinematic culture at that particular time. And with the revelation of who the main killer is always about, in my opinion, always seems to comment on a particular aspect of our culture that, frankly, we should be talking about, because it's not something particularly healthy that we should be letting prolong. I mean, we should be paying attention to our kids more. We should be looking at ourselves as parents. We should be, not blaming every problem we have on other people, especially when they're like the killer from the third one. He's blaming everyone else for the fact, for things that they had nothing to do with, and here he is.
Well, some of them, the parents were killing too.
Oh yeah, well that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean about characters like Mrs. Loomis, or even the dad from Scream 6. Is the fact that these are guys who either were bad parents and they refused to accept it, or then you have the dad who very clearly enabled his kid and not wanting to acknowledge the fact that he made a monster out of his kid. And even worse, he's imprinting that onto his other kids and turning them into monsters as well. So
exactly.
yeah. So that's yeah. I mean, I hope that's how you feel about the Scream series on that level.
Yeah.
Okay, your turn.
No particular order. I'm gonna go with Microwave Massacre. Oh my god!
I have not seen this film.
I think it was filmed in 79, but they didn't get released to 83 or something.
I have never seen this one. I've heard of it, but I've never seen that.
Oh my! I never laughed so hard. It was so good. And the main guy in the film, oh my god, let me see if I can find his name. It's so rude. Oh, I think it's Thomas Singer.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, Jackie Vernon. Jackie Vernon, I think he's the main person, but I think he voices some of the characters on Disney or something like that. I don't know.
Versatility.
Wow. Man, this guy, I think it was Disney, but he did some voices for a really popular. Anyway, but I never laughed so hard. You got to see it. I laughed. Oh. I mean, I was just laughing.
So this one is just, yeah, if you want to give a synopsis,
it's a dark comedy. So basically, it's this guy who's fed up with his wife cooking. So she decides to buy a giant microwave to make these outlandish dishes. And he just wants a perfectly regular meal. And then things got out of control. Something bad happens to her. So he decided to get rid of the body. But unfortunately, he didn't have no food. So she becomes a tasty treat. However, she's not the only tasty treat that he was out there for. So.
Oh.
Why do
I have a feeling I'm going to be on your show later on talking about I have a feeling I could see the future, and I feel like this is
I did a TikTok about it. I did two episodes. I was just laughing.
This sounds beautiful.
Wild.
This sounds like my jam.
And some of the dialogue was pretty fucked up.
That's great. A good weird example of this, Happy Death Day, is a slasher that's a PG-13 movie, which is kind of wild. But if you want to hear about the one slasher that I also feel proves that you could do a slasher and it doesn't have to go as great. Well, it doesn't have to go hard on the gore or something like that, but still be creepy and still be atmospheric. And we've covered it on the show before, but honestly, but the movie was rated PG. The movie's called Tourist Trap.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Tourist Trap. Actually, I think
that was a wild one.
That one to me takes this. That I think shows how imaginative you can take the slasher formula.
It confused the hell out of me.
It starts off as the typical slasher scenario: bunch of kids just on a road trip. Car breaks down, but they end up finding this rundown wax museum on the side of the road. And yeah, the Paris Hilton House of Wax was much more of a remake of this than it actually was a remake of House of Wax.
Yeah.
But now it would just be that standard scenario where they just stumble into the den of a crazed killer. But then you throw in the fact that the killer has telekinetic ability and the fact that he has dissociative identity disorder where he's dealing with the guilt of, and even he has a fascinating motivation of the fact that he went insane after killing his wife and brother after he caught them in flagrante, and he is just hoarding all these mannequins and using his ability to kind of keep everything alive. And it just kind of showed it is a base slasher scenario where the character is getting picked off. You have your heroine character, but you throw in telekinesis, you throw in this wild melodrama, you throw in this kooky score by Pino Donaggio, and you throw in a very charismatic performance by Chuck Connors, and you make a thoroughly, and even with the absence of blood, the absence of, there's only implied nudity in it. Like, of course, there's doing, well, who needs a bathing suit when they jump into the water? But of course, it's all them just rippling water. You can't see a thing, which is hilarious to me. Just, it's like, what's the point of even alluding to it if you're not actually doing it? Not saying I want to see it, but as Joe Bob says,
that movie confused me a little bit. I was like, why is things moving?
Yeah.
And then it kind of, it plays itself out, but I was too busy trying to get why,
But to
yeah.
me, it was a perfect example of how you can actually do unique and interesting things with the slasher subgenre,
Yeah.
just by adding just the one little element to make it odd. And yeah, throwing in telekinesis was a pretty smart move. So
Yeah, that
yeah.
is true.
All right, your turn.
I have the Slayer.
Oh,
Came out in 82.
yeah, that's another.
Slayer.
I've heard of this one as well. I've seen the Arrow Video has an edition of that with a really interesting cover. So
It is freaking weird. So it's like this lady is having these nightmares, and she doesn't know why she's having these nightmares. So they decide to go on a vacation to an island where they would have no reception and no way to calling help if something happens. And as she
hmm.
is there, she is starting to see things that she had in her dream. Um, but then you realize it's like this supernatural beast or something that is after her or after everyone. It is so weird. And it's like, why would you go to an island where it's like stuff was so obvious
Hmm.
that it could go wrong, that you're yelling at the TV because you're like, why would you do that? Like, it just
Ah,
it's a good one. It's
yeah.
just
It's just one of those ones that it's one of those ones that for an audience it's easy to engage with.
yeah,
Yeah,
you will engage, because I was
yeah,
like, why would you go up there? And then why would you stick your head into something, you hear some monsters, and then you do that and you know what's gonna happen? It was just like I was yelling at the screen. So yeah, it's
yeah.
a fun one.
Though in our talk about some of the actually we've talked about pieces which which I believe that was in Spain where that one was filmed. Well, we haven't talked about Italy, and one that I would say is for me was a very influential one, and we're going into the realm of giallo here. My top is Tenebrae, and again we've tackled this on the show before, but this is one where it's a classic style whodunit. Well, like in pure giallo fashion, it's a whodunit. It has the killer with a straight razor and black gloves, all the cool things we love about it. But this is one that is so engaging on a plotting level, and it really does buck the trend again of people who say that slashers are, have no substance and no clever plotting. And I'm like going, here's my friend Peter Neal, and here is this killer who is killing people according to the chapters of his book. And then as we dig deeper, we find twist upon twist upon twist, and the end, and the plot changes, and you don't realize it changed until you get to the final twist of the movie, and then it gets you looking back. It's one of those ones that really does challenge your perception of what's going on. And this is, to me, I feel like when anyone tries to dare say that a slasher has no nuance or no technique of the way a movie's made, I will direct them over to this one. And a lot of times they'll come back to me going, holy shit, that was a mind blower kind of thing. And this to me is another strong example of the versatility of the subgenre. So have you seen Tenebrae?
No, I have not.
Ooh, it's an Argento. So what? To be continued. Your turn. All right, you're up.
What I have on here is Terrifier.
It's funny. I've got Terrifier 2 on mine. So
I don't care for the movies. I just like the clown. So that's the only reason why it's on.
So yeah, I mean, going back to our topic about the iconography, sometimes do you think that's all we really need to enjoy a good slasher? Sometimes it's just you have a charismatic killer just doing his thing.
Yeah, because I do not care for Friday the 13th. I don't care for the Halloweens as the character. Like I'm just not a Michael Myers fan. I don't care for Jason. Like, I may have their figure, but it's just part of the horror genre. It's not my favorite.
It's that idea that you acknowledge their street cred, but you don't.
Yeah.
You're not in their gang.
Freddy too. Like, I think it's just because I grew up with them. It's just oversaturated, and
That's
Art
fair.
the Clown is different. So I think that's why I like him, because it's like At first I was like, whatever, but then he kind of grew on me when I saw the second one.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I like this guy. And plus I interviewed David Howard Thornton.
Well, and you see,
So
and
I got the inside personality up close, and I was like, I like this guy.
yeah, and
So,
there is a kind of, and actually, I think that's another fun thing to point out
he
about
is such
this.
a sweet guy.
He is. No, that's another thing that is fun to point out at this juncture is that all the people who have ever embodied all these icons of horror, and most, again, people outside looking in think these people are probably like these malformed, like tattooed, like pierced, like reprobates, but then you meet them and most of them are like actually really sweet, very like regular Joes. Kane Hodder is the kind of guy who actually likes it if you walk up to him and rip one. He's openly said it on his podcast with Alyssa Rose. He's like saying, "Oh man, I love it when people walk up to me and rip one."
Oh Lord, I've seen him signing, but I never walked up to him. I never.
Yeah, but and that's the kind of the wacky thing about something like Terrifier is that David Howard Thornton is the most soft-spoken, like kind of gentle, very like kind of personality, and here he is playing easily one of the most brutal killers in recent memory. But to go to the reason why I put Terrifier, specifically Terrifier 2 on my list, it has nothing to do with the movie itself. It has to do with the fact that I feel like what Damien Leone has achieved has kind of resurrected the renegade spirit of the slasher. Mm-hmm. Specifically the way that they made this film outside the studio system. The first one was crowdfunded. Second one was crowdfunded, and they ended up getting way more because people love the first one so much. And they've been able to make these films and release them unmolested by the MPAA. Yeah. And the fact that the first one was made, or the second one was made for like 350 grand or somewhere in that ballpark, ended up making 14, 15 million. And now the next one's being made for even more because of, it's the idea that it brings back to that old, renegade spirit, even going all the way back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where people made these movies on the cheap, grabbed a camera, and we are living in that age where we can pick up our phones even and make a movie. And to me, I think Terrifier 2 kind of embodied that idea of people making the movies on their terms, and just through what is going on in the way movies are released and the way they're distributed, the way they're advertised now. I think, and the fact that the movies have come out, have been able to be representative of themselves without any kind of interference from the studios. That's the dream that unfortunately a lot of horror franchises, especially like, have always had a problem with, where they've always had to kowtow to MPAA, to the studios and all that. So whether you love or hate the movies or not, to me, that's an inspiration to live by. And the fact that it's a slasher, and to me, I think the slasher by its very nature is able to kind of be the embodiment of that renegade spirit that I feel like a lot of independent filmmakers should aspire to in order to really stand out from the masses, which is funny now that I think about that. To stand out, you got to do what this one does. Yeah. That's kind of a contradiction. All right, your turn.
I have Doom Asylum. I love that movie. That was I don't know what it was, but it was the funniest shit I've ever seen. And it was just far-fetched. I mean,
oh yeah,
to be laying on the table and not even strapped down, tied down, and just letting this man cut your toes
off
was just crazy.
And that's at the later point of the movie. By that point in the movie, I'm willing to accept that because of all the crazy ass shit that preceded it.
Oh, and the way he leaped.
Oh yeah, the way he leaps over the thing, or even just the fact that Patty Mullen is calling her boyfriend mom. Or
oh yeah, that was
calling Dr. Young. Come on.
And then what was the chick's name? She was like, make it nice and hot.
Yeah.
It was just crazy.
So I'm kind of sensing a pattern with you. Like you say, slashers aren't your top, but I'm noticing kind of a pattern of the slashers you do seem to like here. So I'm sensing high camp is kind of like
I think so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you know what? I am with you absolutely. I mean, Sleepaway Camp, I think, falls underneath the camp, but yeah, it falls underneath high camp for me, largely because, yeah, that's the one where the acting is not great. Well, actually, not that the acting's not great. It's just you're letting the kids just be kids, kind of thing. And because it's so melodramatic, and you've got Edward Billis' score with the high chords that go bah, bah, just really punctuating. This is traumatizing. This is traumatizing. So yeah, so funny enough, bouncing off of Doom Asylum, going into mine, yeah, that Sleepaway Camp, that would be my side, because yeah, high camp is a great way to enjoy slashers, because and a lot of times I've said this to people, it it just needs to be entertaining. It doesn't need to be say anything profound. It doesn't need to say anything. It just sometimes just needs to be fucking fun.
Mm-hmm.
And Doom Asylum is just a friggin' ball of fun.
It
right
was.
there. And Sleepaway Camp as well. And Sleepaway Camp as well. And that's what I always tell people. It's like sometimes you just want to have a grand old time and just have fun.
Yeah.
Even ones like Intruder, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I already said Sleepaway Camp, so now we're back to you again.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Halloween H2O.
Ah.
They give it 98. I think that's under Halloween, first one. That's the best one out of all of them. Under Halloween.
All right, so what now, given everything you said about Michael Myers, what is it specifically about this one that stands out to you? And why does it define slashers for you?
I think this one, because you see less of Michael, and I think we get to understand and see what has happened to Laurie Strode. Like you see that she's in hiding. There's brand new characters. It felt more why she's in hiding. She had a kid. Like it just gave a different feel. And then her fight scenes, like she was more fighting back. At some point she wasn't. She was going to run away, but then it was like, I need to figure out, because I'm just going to keep running.
Yeah.
And she did everything to protect her son and protect anyone she had to. But she was always prepared if something happens, even though she was taking pills and whatever. But I love that when she had to fight, and she fought. Like it wasn't and take off. Like she was
picking up an axe, she's picking up knives.
Yeah. And that scene when she's under the tables, I mean, it just, I don't know, it gave a reason for her character to be crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And then the climax, and then the ending was just like, wow. Like you knew it was coming, because when she reached out to touch him, the first thing I thought was the one where oh my God, what's her name? Where she reached out and touched him.
Oh, you mean like Jamie Lloyd, and you're talking about Jamie Lloyd in the fourth one?
Yeah. When she touched him, and then she went, kind of weird. And when I saw that, I was like, ooh, where is this going? And then she just like
lopped his head off.
But then when you find out that it really wasn't him, they just pulled anything.
I know. And then what do we get for our troubles? We get Busta Rhymes doing kung fu.
Yeah. Yeah, but but the only thing about but the resurrection, I wish they could have, because when she kissed him, I kind of felt like she took part of him, because if you remember from before, but then it just died her off. I don't know.
I always joke with people, I think Resurrection would have been better as a Jason movie, not as a no, seriously, because Friday the 13th is a franchise that has silly stories, and actually is very unashamed about that. That's why I like it. That's why I like the franchise so much, that it has no shame. So the idea of a reality show going to Camp Crystal Lake, messing around, and then, oh, Jason's here. I'm like, that is and even the characters, you don't even have to change the characters from Resurrection. You could keep those characters in there. I can buy someone wanting to get into a martial arts brawl with Jason more than I do Michael Myers, because Michael Myers, one thing I got to commend for most of the Halloween movies, that is how seriously they take him. They're ones where, like, some of the best ones to me are ones where they still treat Michael Myers as the powerful force of evil that he is, and really show that he is something not to be fucked with. So I I totally get why people love Halloween H2O, and I definitely think, and I understand why people like the route that one goes with Laurie Strode, because a lot of people really click with Laurie Strode from the first film, and this route is another good exploration of trauma and how you run the risk of projecting that trauma onto your kids, and how that can end up, in your efforts to protect them, have them push away from you.
It would definitely explain why she was the way she was in Halloween and Kills and Ends, but they just tossed that out, and that's another time. But yeah.
I'm covering those in a different capacity, so don't worry about
Oh, okay.
yeah, in a very long-term capacity, but nevertheless, that's a story for a different day. So, all right, you did Halloween H2O. Some of these we've already kind of talked about at length, but one that I would say to me is the ultimate slasher by virtue of the fact that it actually, when I first saw it, like freaked me right the hell out, because I just never knew that a movie like this could be made at the time I saw it, is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, for many people would say like, oh, snore, but I'm sorry. And I
snore.
And I'm like, well, I also did a full commentary on this before, but this to me showed how you could have a lot of interesting layers as to what you want to do with a slasher, and it stands up to multiple viewings because of that. Now, when I first saw this, it got to the point where I thought I was watching a documentary, because I thought I was watching like legitimately disgusting, depraved people. I thought the cameraman was able to somehow cameras into this hell house and watch these disgusting people do their thing. I thought he hired like people from an insane asylum from it. So I felt a sense of realism in that first viewing. But then when I kept watching it and learning about the behind the scenes stuff, finding out that Tobe Hooper actually kind of meant it to be a low-key comedy. And then I went back to watch it again, and I actually realized, oh my God, there actually is funny shit going on in this movie. That immediately clicked with me, the idea that slashers can have layers, like on a thematic and a tonal level, and that the only way you're ever going to grasp them all is to watch them multiple times. So for me, Texas Chainsaw Massacre perfectly did that, and did that for decades even. So yeah, I don't know how you feel about TCM, but I've already spoken ad nauseum about it.
I mean, I've seen them. They're all right. They don't do nothing for me. I've seen even the remake, or I've seen them all.
The rest of the franchise,
1, 2, 3, 4, like, well, I've seen them all.
Two is a beautiful beast in and of itself for its own reasons, but I've always felt the major reasons why they've never been able to capture the magic of the first, and it has nothing to do with the filmmaking. A lot of the filmmakers do great jobs in their own right. It's just there's lightning in a bottle with the way they made the first one, and much like anyone says, it's really hard to recapture that. And a lot of them have done their damnedest to try, and they've done interesting stuff, but there's just a magic. All right, what's your last one?
Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3.
3
Warriors. Only 3.
Really?
I like them all. I do like them.
Okay.
More than others, but the number one for me is Dream Warriors.
And you're not alone, actually. I've heard a lot of people say they feel the same way about it. I know, and I can see why, because it's the kind of that pinnacle of Freddy where you're seeing like the scary part of Freddy, but then you see the little fun part of Freddy peeking out in this one. So yeah, was that the primary reason, or was there more to it?
I don't. When I was a kid, I watched it multiple times. Multiple times. But I think it was the characters. I think there were a variety of characters that I actually liked. And I love how each one had a different power based on who they were in real life, and who they wanted to be in real life.
Yeah.
Say that. And I think that resonated with me because I was a nerd, and I would get picked on, and I just felt like if there was a place I could go and I could be powerful, I could be strong, I could be all these things, I would do that. And each one of them did it because they were victims, and where they felt they were locked away at a hospital, and they just couldn't be themselves. They were stuck in a world where they just felt like no one was listening, no one cared. They just drugged them up and put them in a room
and didn't want to actually take
I
him.
think the real villain was that lady, that
Oh
nurse.
God, yeah.
Yeah, I think Freddy just so happened to come into play because people, it manifests through one character and she started pulling people in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. But I think the real villain was, drug them up, lock them away, and not listen to who they are, what really on. And I don't mind saying, I've been in a hospital where no one cared. Like,
Yeah.
I'm in here for help and you're not helping me. So I
Yeah.
get it. Yeah.
It's that idea that the people who are by their vocation supposed to be helping are so slave to rationality that the idea that they don't want to open their eyes to the idea that there's maybe something beyond this. Well, of course, it's like Shakespeare said, there's more things in heaven and earth that are dreamt of in our philosophy. The idea that because these kids are being bombarded by something that they can't prove it, they can't properly make them understand, but the fact that they don't want to actually sit there and listen and maybe, I don't know, throw them a bone and say, okay, well, let's listen to you. I agree with you. I think the one moment that actually gets me I think the one moment in the entire franchise that actually gets me misty-eyed and actually to the point of tears is the moment when Kirsten is chanting, Freddy's, 1, 2 phrase come for you, and then Nancy comes in, finishes it, and then she immediately runs to her and embraces her. I was like, that's what kids need right there, is someone who understands them. And I loved how the movie was saying something about how shared trauma, as someone goes through it, how they should take it upon themselves to try to help other people who feel the same way. So that's kind of actually that in itself, with the discussion that we're having today, I wonder if that's another key aspect that why people jump towards slashers, is because not only are people sometimes projecting on the killer and venting frustrations about injustice done to them, but for a lot of other times it's about people connecting with the main character and maybe seeing something in the traumas that they suffer, and through them kind of see how they can gather their own strength in order to deal with their own personal demons, especially when that demon is something that seems so powerful that they can't overtake it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean that's what I was getting out of it, because people you go to these places sometimes by force, and no one is listening. It's like, what's the point of coming to a place that's supposed to be, for you to get help, get counseling, when no one is listening? And the person that comes to help these kids, a voice for the kids, because someone experienced it, and it's still, even her voice was being silenced. And it's just like, what's the point of the whole facility? So these kids were getting picked off, because the only one that was listening to them was Freddy. But Freddy influence was not the best, but he was listening to him because he gave them what they really wanted. But he also took it away. And I just think that's real life.
Yeah. And I think at the core, people like horror fans enjoy slashers because it's a harsh ass world out there. And unfortunately, a lot of times the people who are in charge, who are supposed to be helping us out, are either self-interested or so blinded by only using what they know or what they think they know as a comfort, that we just don't know that we ourselves, as people who deal with the horrors that we deal with all the time, that a lot of times the slashers see us, horror sees us, and a lot of times slashers are like the most primal, most visceral portrayal of people being forced by trial by fire to have to confront evil and try to persevere it. And so a lot of times, depending on how it goes, it could either end badly, it could end in triumph, but either way, it's going to end in a way that feels credible to us as the viewer.
And one last thing on that is that if you remember how she was in the first one, she had to build up the strength to fight Freddy and survive.
Yeah.
In its own way. So she was trying to do that because eventually, and she said eventually they're going to have to face him, but they're not strong enough. So
Yeah.
even though in their dreams, you know, she's a badass, he's a wizard, he's strong, they're not strong enough to fight a supernatural being that could take them out in one swipe. So when they did get into their pretend moment, where for each character, and they faced him, his wizard power wasn't strong enough.
Yeah.
Her willpower wasn't strong enough. His strength wasn't strong enough. Like, you know, so that's real life. What
Mhm.
Because sometimes you're thrust into things that you're not ready, and then you have a person who's trying, but there's also the person trying to shut them up. So
Yeah.
it just like I get it, and I yeah
And not just that, but they're not strong enough separately. And the way
yeah
Freddie was able to pick a lot of them off was by separating them.
yeah.
Then when they were together, that's when they were able to finally fight back against him,
Mm-hmm.
which is another key aspect about,
Like
you know,
you need
people who,
family, friends,
exactly,
team.
family,
Yeah.
friends, like the people you choose, or even I even have people who specifically have people to help them kind of keep them in check, and they in turn to the other person. But I think that's the statement that I think they were trying to say with that movie, is that sometimes in order to deal with the things that haunt us and potentially could destroy us, is that we need people with us in order to help stem the tide.
Yeah. But she did it by herself. And I think that was a point where she was trying to get them to be prepared by themselves if
Yeah,
necessary. And it still didn't
precisely.
work
Yeah.
out.
All right. So I think on that note, I think we've kind of hit the nail on the head as to what makes, like, one of the many aspects that makes slashers such a, well, let's face it, it's probably like the bread and butter of the horror genre, and what it is that makes it appealing, even to people who may not be into them. But there's still aspects of it that really kind of sing to us as fans of horror. So, yeah, for everyone listening at home, either on the watching on the YouTube or watching or listening to it at home, put in your comment section and kind of tell us what slashers mean to you as a horror fan. And to hear more incredible, wonderful, effervescent things, and also some really great interviews with other people contributing to the horror community, go ahead, Ivotres, and give us all your socials. Let them know where they can find you.
They can find me on YouTube, Horror Movies and Beyond. You can type
Yeah.
it in, or my first name, Ivotrs, and I'm the only one in the world, so everything will come up. If you Google it, it's all about me. But yeah, you can find me there. Um, you can find me on TikTok. I'm mostly active on Instagram. But yeah, I'm everywhere.
Yeah, you really were. I've been seeing a lot of the coverage of yeah, some of the recent stuff you've been going on out there on the con circuit.
Oh, well, yeah, that one that was LA Comic Con, and I have not been there in probably, oh my god, in probably several 7 years or so, and I just happened to go because you know radio part of Radio Silence was there, 2/3 of it,
Ooh.
and which was Matt and Tyler, and I had to see them, and there was
Oh.
some other great people, and we caught up on some stuff, but and then I met up with some other people, and it was just a lot of fun. But yeah, but I'm mostly on Instagram, and mostly on YouTube. Like those are the two. The other ones I'm here and there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I see you poke your head on TikTok every now and then. I mean, I still
Every now and then.
every now and then, actually, it always seems perfectly timed for when the rare times I decide to do live streaming. It just always seems to work
But
out that way.
that one I don't know what's happening, but everything I post, they say it's not me.
That's not you?
It's not me, and I'm the one talking. So I don't know. I said, and I would have to fight him. Like that is me. There's
Yeah.
no logos. It's me. And twice they like denied me my appeal. And I was like, and I took screenshots. So I was like, that's me. I'm talking.
That's
So I don't know. No one's taken over my. I still have my path. Like you know, I'm still there. It's
yeah.
just everyone. And except for the old ones I put, like the ones, you know, on this day, but every time I post, so I'm down to 3. So if you get 5, they take you out. And I'm just, That's why you haven't seen me post a lot, because I don't understand. I don't get it. It's
That is
me.
weird. That is so weird. Well, fortunately,
Anyway.
yeah. I mean, I mean, I don't say fortunate. I don't know. It depends if you enjoy my content, but I'm still on TikTok. So, but follow us over on there. But thank you once again for joining us, and let us not, have such a long gap next time. I love doing this with you. I love doing this with you.
I enjoy talking to you, because once we get started, we could
Yeah,
probably talk all day.
absolutely. And, and as fun as it is to gush about everything we love, sometimes it is fun to actually have like, civil discussion. I think that's a better way to put it. Civil discussion. Debate nowadays just sounds like arguing with wine, you
Yeah.
know?
And he doesn't always agree with me and
Oh,
back
no.
and forth, but we understand.
Yeah.
We have our reasons and
Yeah,
stuff.
precisely. All right, everybody. Yeah, yeah, we should probably break it off because, yeah, like you said, we could go on all day, and I know we've got stuff. So in the meantime, everybody, yeah, definitely follow Ivotres on horror movies and beyond. And in the meantime, if you wish to delve deep into the dark bowels of human imagination, ask yourself this simple question: what's in the podcast?
Thank you for joining us on this edition of What's in the Podcast. If you find yourself hungry for more deep cuts into the gloriously morbid and macabre, you can also find us on TikTok, Blue Sky, and YouTube at Narcotic Casserole. You can also follow us on Instagram at Narcotic Casserole 25. Also on Twitter. Yes, Twitter. Elon can suck it. At Narcotic Casser 1, NARCOTICCASSER 1. Follow us if you dare.
Give me a second. My cat is just, oh,
Clovis.
he's right. Come on, Clovis.
Come on, Clovis.
Come on, Clovis. Yeah, come on. Oh, Jesus Christ. She at the door just screaming.
Yeah.
Now you in here. Now shut up.